All right. So today begins my presentations on the on chapter one and the introduction. So we're going to spend some time going through that. And at any point in time where I will be calling on people to ask questions, so I'm going to set up the screen in a particular manner with various pieces of information on it. All right, so let's close this off. I need to reopen this, put the people on the side. All right, so okay, is this clear enough for people? You can see the PowerPoint screen with the information.
Yes,
Pretty
sir.
clear. All
Yes,
right,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
all right. So
Yes,
the
Yes.
yes, sir.
okay, guys. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I need to keep an eye on the class itself. So just in case anybody's hand goes up, there's a comment I can quickly check and see what's going on with that. All right. Okay, guys. So let's get started. So of course, well, this is exploring leadership, BUSI 203. So let's start off with first and foremost the course description. Primarily, this is an introductory course in leadership, so it's not meant to be one of those deep dives into leadership and ethics, but more of an introductory course. But it's an introductory course with a bit of a twist. It's going to focus on your personal experiences with leadership and ethical values, and it's going to revolve heavily around your own self analysis. So you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of personal reflection that is required for this class, which tends to give some people difficulty, but we'll see how that works out with most of us. Of course, you're going to be looking at your personal and leadership self assessment. So there are assignments that are set up to try and push you to, you know, work with the content that we're looking at. We're going to look at the various tools of ethical decision making. Well, one particular tool, Kidder's model, we're going to be looking at it because it's kind of all encompassing. And we're going to use that to examine ethical decision making. And you will engage in some retrospective ethical decision making analysis. That's dealing with your own past histories. Okay. So, course objectives, of course, we're going to be trying to look at the various theories of leadership that have evolved over time. Um, we'll be looking at that in particularly a lot more detail. Ms. Daly, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I was having some problems signing in. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We haven't missed much. All right. So we're also going to be looking at applying the various tools of ethical decision making and defending the decisions that you have made in the past. As we said, as we start to get to understand ourselves a little better, we'll start to evaluate our own values and that type of stuff, and try to see whether or not we are truly ethical in our behavior. I mean, we'd all like to think that, but sometimes we have to think a little twice about it, right? Create a plan that applies the concept of good governance, which means you are one of the last assignments is for you to do the leadership plan. That is what that assignment is designed to provide you an opportunity, which is to create a plan to move forward with how you'll look at further developing your leadership as you progress in your life from this point onwards. We are, of course, going to be organizing you into teams to be able to perform various tasks. So, of course, we are going to be looking at group dynamics and teamwork. There's a section or a presentation that's going to deal with this specifically, but this is a practical class, so you'll all have to get involved with group work throughout the class. All right. Um, we're going to be looking at leadership issues, contemporary issues facing us in our current lives and situations that are facing us, both in a regional level, international, but more focused hopefully on our local environment as well. Um, and finally, what we're hoping that this course will achieve is that you would display some behavior that is indicative of a good personal philosophy of positive leadership and ethics. So let's evaluate this learning outcome a little bit because I want us to focus on the term modifying behavior. Um, Let's see who can speak. Daly spoke. Let's talk to Daly as she just came. Daly, have you ever engaged in? First off, are you a parent, Miss Daly?
Am I
A parent? Do you have children?
No.
All right. So how recently have you been a child, or you still consider yourself a child?
I still consider myself a child.
Okay, good. So, Miss Daly, when's the last time anybody exercised any kind of behavior modification exercises with you?
Behavior modification. Um, like 10 years ago, maybe.
All right. What
As
and what?
in, like, discipline.
Ah, there we go. What was the technique that was utilized for eliciting that change?
Uh, like all Caribbean parents, most likely bells.
All right. Hot bakes on, what was it called? Hot bakes on chocolates. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, so they used physical punishment. Now, the behavior that they were punishing you about, have you really changed that behavior? To be honest.
I would say I have. I've gotten no,
that,
no,
that,
so
that's un-
I don't think I was a bad child per se. It's just, one or two things I did wasn't so,
acceptable by
right.
your parents.
Yeah, acceptable. I wasn't a bad child at all. It's just
So,
one or two times.
if I ever talk to your parents, they may say differently. Um,
Mom, would you like to hear now?
no, I'm treating you like an adult.
Never mind.
Wow, the threat was real. Okay, so Miss Daly, have do you really think though that the physical or what we call external stimulus to behavior modification is the best method? It seems to be the one of choice that most of our parents have used on us in the past. I
It
mean, I
is
used.
the one of choice. To be honest, I think that different methods apply to different people. I
Uh-huh.
think some people may need the physical in order to change their behavior, but it
Hmm.
wouldn't apply to everybody.
Everybody agrees with this statement that Miss Daly is making, or or has a different experience.
Yes, so I agree. I don't think it will apply to everybody because my parents would use that technique all the time. They would more so take away devices.
All right, so
So
they all right. So rather than physical punishment, they used removal of privilege.
yes.
Right, it's the same thing though. I'll show you how they're both the same. In both instances, the stimulus to make a change is coming from outside of you. So it's called external stimulus. One is just a little more severe than the other. You understand, Caitlin?
So what you call it?
It's called stimulus, external stimulus for behavioral change.
Okay, okay.
You seeing it?
Uh,
So yes.
Yeah.
I would kind of agree with what the first girl said
Hmm.
because, well, it's different because for my brother, it was different. I feel like he deserved every lick he gets. But for me, I didn't really care for the lick. Sometimes my father would just be sitting on there talking to me for like hours and I wish I'd get licks. Like, I don't know what he would be talking to me about.
Right. So you have the so Caitlin has identified the use of the removal of privileges, which is a form of punishment. Um, we've spoken about another technique, which is corporal punishment, and you've spoken to both corporal punishment and emotional blackmail. That's the second one that you were dealing with, emotional blackmail. I found, as I had to deal with my nephews and them as I grew up, because I don't have any kids, um, and I was disciplining some of my nephews. I found that the talking to somebody actually works better, but not with the blackmail part. Parents are really good with this emotional blackmail. Any parents here among us? Don't be shy. Yes,
Sir,
Euclid?
I want
And
to say something after.
and
Okay, Aruna.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh, Euclid.
Well, my method is my children don't like embarrassment. So no,
Yeah, that
it's the
embarrassing thing is
truth.
failure.
They don't like embarrassment. So the approach when get like my body language changes,
Mm-hmm.
and especially it depends on who they are around.
Uh-huh.
They would work me to suit.
So they know.
Yeah, they will work me to suit. Yeah, they will pull me aside and we will have a conversation, and then the behavior would change.
Uh-huh. But does it stay changed? Do you find you have to repeat yourself when it comes to certain things?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But and then after, sometimes I feel like they feeling that I embarrassing them, um it triggers change in them. I feel bad about it.
Right. So you start to feel guilty from it. So that obviously can't
R-
be a healthy thing, right? I see
Yeah.
Arissa has her hand up, but before Arissa, Aruna was uh, making a statement. Aruna, you want to go ahead?
no, sir. Just I'm let you know I'm also parent, sir.
Uh huh. And do you use any form of corporal punishment with your children?
No, sir. I could understand their point of view. I can see. Then I will forgive them. I won't give any punishment, sir.
Mm. But you
I
use
will
the.
explain. Yeah, I will explain the things, consequences, everything.
Uh huh.
I won't give any punishment, sir.
Okay. And has it worked? How old are your children now?
Now they are form four, form form four, like 15
From
years.
four. Yeah, 15. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. That's
yeah.
this is a tricky age when they open to a lot of other influences. Boys or girls?
Two girls, one boy.
Okay. Do you find yourself treating the boys and the girls differently?
Yes, sir. Boys is very difficult to handle. 10 girls is equal to one boy to handle.
Wow.
They
Okay.
girls is can understand easily what we explain the things, but to deal boys need lot of patience.
Hmm. Okay.
We
And
have to control our emotions then to handle them.
it's true. Yeah, because sometimes you lose your temper and you want to
Yeah, yeah.
you want to do something
They
else.
so much addicting the playing games.
Hmm.
So they won't listen at all. We have to handle very smooth. If we shout, they will make again.
Hmm. I see. Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing,
Yeah.
Aruna. All right, Arissa, I see you, Miss Garcia. See your hand up.
Sir, I wanted to talk about what you can tell about the embarrassment. Sir, I can't take embarrassment. So anytime my mother, like a few times, if she say I'll come in at school and embarrass you, yeah, the behavior go and stop one time. Because I
Mm.
pray that I'm not going through that, sir.
Yeah, but the thing about it though, and thanks a lot because um, the well, I have come across some children who are what we call buff proof. Um, in my experience as a teacher, in that the parents could do what they want. They're just going to do what they want to do. Um, and the problem that we have here is that I can't if the course objective is behavior modification, I can't use any of those techniques of external stimulus to other than the reward of a good grade, because that's also a technique that can be used for behavior modification through some form of transactional approach. So if you do well in the course, that type of stuff. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Okay. What I have found is that the the best um, the best way for us to make permanent change is in the area of internal motivation for change. Um, and that's because what we are more likely to keep that change if we are ourselves motivated to make it. That makes sense? In a lot of instances, if the stimulus for change comes from outside of ourselves, be it from corporal punishment, fear of embarrassment, removal of privileges, it or just somebody trying to make you make some kind of change, it doesn't stick because the motivation for it is not going to always be present. Whereas if it's something that is internal to you and okay, I need to make this change because this is better for me, I will do better, I will benefit from this type of activity. That is the type of change that we're looking for from this program. So, in essence, what we're trying to do is to put together a program that will appeal to you to want to change yourselves or to want to modify your behavior, and as I've said here, indicative of a personal philosophy of positive leadership and ethics. So we're trying to make good people out of you, not just good people, but good leaders out of you guys here. Now, most of you are already in some form of leadership positions or leadership roles, minor or major, depends upon where you find yourself. But what kind of leader are you? And for that, we're going to be doing some assessments across the board for it. All right, so far so good. All right. So the textbooks that are available on the e-classroom for download are these two textbooks here, the Exploring Leadership by the Comais, Lucas, and McHorn, and the Leadership Experience. We went through this last week. These are the two main texts that we're using. Primarily, the vast majority of the information is going to come out of the Exploring Leadership text, and we are supplementing a few chapters from the DAFT into some of the areas that needed some different treatment. Because the difference between these two books is the leadership experience is more of a management textbook and approaches the leadership question from the management perspective or the management framework of leadership, whereas the exploring leadership looks at leadership more from a very general standpoint of leadership across the board, regardless, especially in non-profit organizations and in non-business environments, non-traditional business environments. Okay, so we're going to be paying attention to that. So let's start looking at the content itself from the chapter and the introduction. So in the chapter is actually titled Leadership in the Modern World, an introduction, right? So we're going to be focused on trying to look at what is the current trends in leadership theory, and we have to put into it a bit of emphasis on connecting what we are going to get from these textbooks and from this course the into the Caribbean context. The reason for that is the books that we're using and the material that we're engaging with tends to be of a North American origin. Primarily because there's more work being done there, and the work that is being done there is more accessible to us, simply because of volume. So we would need to bridge the gap between what the North American influences and environment creates, and we will have to supplement the Caribbean experience and the local experience, regional experiences that impact upon how these concepts and philosophies might work. So we have some work to do on our set. So when you are presenting your chapters, the examples that are utilized from the textbook are fine for explaining some of the content, but you need to find some way to connect some of the material to the local environment across the board. That makes sense, guys? Because that's going to be one of the gaps that we're going to have to work to deal with. So, starting with what is leadership, and the definition that we're looking at here is from the relational leadership model, which is what we're going to be looking at in terms of the models of leadership outside them. Leadership is a relational and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. So, in essence, leadership is about the relationships we have with others around us. If you are in a position of leadership, What is the nature of your relationship with these individuals who are your subordinates around you? That is what you have to examine. Now, we could examine it from both sides of the coin. So, if we examine it from the position of what is your relationship with the leaders around you, what is the type of relationship, what is the relational and ethical, um, how would you gauge that, the relationship and the ethics involved with it? That's something you can look at. So one of the ways, quick ways to do this is to kind of think of those teachers that you've encountered in your lifetime as students and examine your outcomes in those courses and the nature of the relationship that was created between yourselves and your teachers. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find those teachers with whom you had very good, close, and I would say productive relationships. They are caring individuals who, looked after your best interests, were ethical in their approach to treating the class. Those are the ones who you probably performed better in than classes that you had teachers who did not seem to care one way or the other, and that would have led to some questionable ethical behavior. And the relationship was not necessarily. It doesn't have to be a bad relationship, but it was a very cold relationship. It wasn't any kind of real connection with the individuals. Does anybody have that type of experience? It might be an unfortunate experience. Might be here within Costat. Who knows? Anybody? Tell me about good experiences that you've had. Carissa, Mackenzie. A couple of Carissas here. Miss Brown, are you able to open your mic?
Hi, sir. Are
Hi,
you hearing
Carissa.
me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Hi.
Hmm.
Um, a good, I think I would say you in Costat when doing micro and macroeconomics with you. I felt like you really cared about your class doing well and succeeding.
That's not a fair. Um, you've put me on the spot,
So
Carissa.
I am always praising you, always, always, always behind the scenes. And of course, I know we may not have that uh, close relationship, but I'm always praising you. So I would say you.
Thank you. All right.
You are welcome.
All right. Arissa, I see Miss Garcia, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I have a teacher. Her name is Tracy. She teach maths or something like that. So I've had her for a few math courses. I mean, everyone. I think I get A's in all of them because she's a good leader and she's very reasonable and she's understanding. So there was a
Right.
time I was sick and I had to go to the doctor and had an exam. And she adjusted the time for me and everything. And at first she's very nice and reasonable. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
yielded good results.
Okay. That's understandable. That's a little bit above and beyond too. Um, what I can say is, um, how many people here in their college life, not with Costat, but with high school, struggled with mathematics or struggled with English? By a show of hands. All right.
Please,
Wow.
sir, can you repeat the question, please?
How many people struggled with math and English, especially mathematics? Wow. Okay, that's a fair number of folks. Okay, all right, cool. Wow. Now, I struggled with mathematics for two reasons. One, my father was a mathematician, and he had very high expectations of us. And it was challenging because my father was a firm believer in corporal punishment of an extreme nature. Um, and I was always scared about doing poorly in math because of the expectations that he had. So fear was one of the factors, and it stepped in pretty early when I was about 4 or 5 years old. my father was teaching me to count, and for whatever reason, I couldn't count beyond four. And my dad would hit me every time I couldn't remember what came after four. And from then until I got to university, I avoided mathematics like the plague. Anything that was math related, was something I tried to stay away from. Interestingly, when I was in secondary school, I came across a couple of nice lecturers who understood my fare and worked with me, and I was really doing really well. And I did so well, I was shifted to a science class for what they called advanced students in mathematics. And the lecturer there was, I don't know what the word is to use. He was a nice person, but his teaching methodology was not what I needed. I was better off with the other people. So similar to you guys, that experience for me um, led to me not doing as well in my. I mean, I eventually passed it. I remember right up to when we used to do mock exams back in our days. I failed my mock exam right up to just before I wrote the O level exam, CXCs at the time. I failed right up to that, and I was quite content to have to fail that course. I mean, but I met another lecturer who I was attending lesson classes with, and he really saved me um, because, excuse me, he had the better aptitude or methodology of teaching. So I was able to kind of scramble a two out of the grade. Um, of course, it came a bit late. I mean, if I was working with him before, but one of the things that comes to mind with a lot of people, and one of the reasons why we have such big problems with mathematics in Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, is because in a lot of instances we are taught a subject by somebody who's afraid of the subject. So what the teacher ends up teaching you is the fear of the subject. They themselves don't understand it, they don't like it, and because they don't like it, that's what the lasting um, the lasting result is for the teacher, for the students coming out from a teacher like that. So that's something I'm going to pay attention to, and it's one of the reasons why we struggle with math in particular. Language, on the other hand, is a cultural thing. Our spoken word and our written word don't match each other. Um, and that's why we generally don't perform well in English, because English is designed to be tested in standard English, and we still have problems recognizing the dialogue that we the I should say not the dialogue, but the spoken word English in Trinidad and Tobago. The way we use our verbs and grammar, our grammar, is different to what standard English requires. So we actually have to approach teaching English in the classroom as a second language, because the spoken word is absolutely different to the written word. I don't know if any of you all would agree with me with that. How about the librarians among us here? Or anybody who has an opinion? Feel free to share. It's just my point of view. No, nobody. Aruna, what is well? You come from India, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, math and English is not English so much, but math is a big thing for you guys in your studies there,
Yes, sir.
and you all excel in mathematics generally as a country.
Yeah, compared to here, maths is more syllabus, sir. Like in A levels, we cover different standard.
Mm-hmm.
Standard is more in mathematics in India.
Yes,
In
correct.
English, here is more, plenty here.
Yeah.
In English, that is standard here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I fear in English, but not maths.
Okay. And you would also struggle with the variation in the classroom from the teacher and what the written word is expected to be on the paper. So so you're coming in first. I take it English is your second language. What's your first language?
First language is Telugu, sir.
Okay, so that's a dialect in from the area of South India that you come from, right?
Yeah, South India, like
Right.
Chennai.
Okay, so that's your first language. Your second language is English, or
Yeah,
do you have another language?
our second language is English, sir.
Right, and you started your studies in English in India, not in Trinidad.
Yeah.
All right. So when you came to Trinidad, did you complete your studies in English, or did you have to do English as a second language here?
Like second language, sir.
Hmm. Okay. How long have you been in Trinidad?
Like since 20 years, I have been here.
Wow. Okay. But but how I don't want to say how old you were, but you were already more mature when you came in to Trinidad.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So
I'm now 40 plus, sir.
all right. So yeah. So your speaking habits and your
Yeah,
language development was kind of more or less fixed at that point in time. All right. That makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. So Aruna would have run into an issue like she's probably going to experience it here in our class. The spoken word and the written word are two different sets of languages because our written word is standard English, as seen from the United States and UK, and there's another variation there one time, and then our spoken word here in Trinidad is Trinidadian. So we have Trinidadian English. So we have all kind of issues that go on with that. So it creates a bit of a challenge for somebody like Aruna who's coming here to treat with um, learning English in the Trinidadian environment and not being able to translate between the standard English. And that's the problem that we have. We try to fool ourselves into thinking that the English that we speak is standard, and it's not. The English that we speak is Trinidadian. And we need to recognize that. I don't know when they're going to do that and start to recognize the strength of the way in which we speak, our rhythm, techniques, and so on. That's something that they have to pay attention to. All right, so let's get back on to leadership. So we understand this definition. We understand the issue about leadership focuses on the relationship that we have with people. So when we talk about leadership, we could talk about leadership from different types of frameworks or different views. The first view is through political science. And when we look at leadership in politics, what we're looking at is how you arrive in a position of power and what you use that power to do. Now, I haven't updated this photo yet, but these guys here represent three countries whose leaders, so we could disregard Biden here, because Trump has now replaced him, and I haven't updated this photo here. But these three positions or leaders in the global sense represent three of the strongest or most influential nations in the world. And currently, what what they may when they start to have problems with each other, it creates a massive amount of problems for us because we're smaller countries among these giants. Okay, so but they have arrived in their various positions through whatever political system exists in their own country. So, in the case of the United States, that occurs through the election process that they have with the electoral senate. In China, it comes through the elections process that is used within the Communist Party, because the Communist Party elects a leader. And in Russia, it was basically how well Putin was able to, I want to say, pull together the support necessary to get himself into a leadership position there. So, kind of like they really refer to him as like a strongman kind of situation. So you have three different techniques of arriving in positions of power, but yet still, they they influence a lot of policy. They influence a lot of other countries. They wield a lot of power, and that power then allows them to manipulate others, to force others into to positions of submission by the mere threat of violence or the threat of some sort of other action, as we could see with Trump and the tariffs that he's threatening to utilize in against China and Mexico and Canada. So that really creates a problem. This is a G20 summit. This one was actually held in New Delhi, India, in 2023, one of the first after the COVID pandemic issues. And what you're looking at here is just a list of various countries who are supposedly going to be some of the biggest economies in the world. Now, for example, can who do you think here among all of these is probably the least influential leader at the global summit? Have a look. If you can see them, which country do you think yields or wields the least amount of influence? Now you'd notice the U.S. is not here, so because the U.S. is probably the most powerful. But which one's the least powerful?
Mexico.
Sorry.
Mexico.
Uh, mm, I don't know. Why would you say Mexico?
I don't know. They just seem like
Well,
How about Italy?
possibly, yeah. Italy is not very strong. Um, they're actually in a bit of a problem. They're still having serious economic issues. The economy is not really booming. It's not contributing a lot to the EU. It does have a role. What about Indonesia?
I was saying Indonesia or South Africa. That would have been my guess.
I wouldn't say South Africa at all.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the BRICS?
The BRICS?
Mm-hmm. BRICK. No, BRICS. BRICS.
No, can't say that.
Right. It's an acronym that describes the fastest growing economies in the world. Daily, I see a hand up.
I was gonna say Argentina.
Possibly, yeah. Argentina's been in decline for a good period of time. Nadira?
I was thinking Australia,
No,
but
Australia. Australia is a huge. They have a massive economy right now. They're kind of in a bit of decline, but they're having it. So I was explaining the BRICS, and the BRICS include the some of the fastest growing economies in the world, which is B is Brazil, India, Russia, China, and South Africa. Some of the largest growing economies, or the quickest growing economies. At one time, Australia was part of it, because they are uh, attempting to, and in fact, China between China and Russia, they are challenging the supremacy of the U.S. dollar in economic trade. So there are some moves afoot. All right. Consider this: before the United States, which was the dominant country in the world? Anybody remembers?
England.
Yep, the UK. This gentleman down here. All right. Well, it's no longer him anymore. He lost the elections in the last thing. But you understand how quickly, or in terms of power adjustments, things take place. And then when somebody arrives in a position of power, what's the objective? What's generally the objective in a political environment when you arrive in a place of power and influence?
So to grow the economy.
No, to stay as long as possible. Think about it. Because if you stay as long as possible in power and in charge, you get more benefit from that. That mean you following? Grow the economy, that's the least on their mind. All right. So let's look at another framework. Here we're looking at the framework of leadership through the vision of management. And management is really looking at effectiveness of us being able to, as a manager, manage our resources, which includes the human resource. So therefore, it looks at the outcomes we're able to achieve from the actions that we take within an organization. So in essence, what we're looking for is we gauge the success or failure of management or leaders in management through profitability. So, how many of these people you recognize? These are top business leaders for 2021. Kind of dated, but some of these faces you should recognize. How many of them do you recognize? Anybody?
So Oprah and Jay-Z.
All right, so you recognize Oprah and Jay Z. Anybody else?
See Mark Zuckerberg there,
Right,
Bezos there,
right. Bezos.
Elon.
Oprah.
Well, Elon, Oprah and Jay Z was already identified. Elon Musk,
Yeah.
right?
We have Martha, what looks like Martha Stewart.
Yes, that's the
Is
new
that
Martha
Martha
Stewart.
Stewart? Okay,
Yes, it
and
is.
I forgot his name, but Virgin Islands guy.
Richard
Or
Branston.
Virgin
Richard Branston.
something.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Richard
Bill
Branston,
Gates there
that's his
too.
name.
Sorry,
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates. Yes.
Jack Ma.
Really, I'd forgotten his name. Yes, but Jack Ma. Which one is Jack Ma? For those who don't know who he is, which guy is Jack Ma? This guy here, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. What's he infamous or famous for?
Alibaba.
Hmm. You know, it's funny he chose that term, Alibaba, and you notice that he's diametrically opposed to Amazon, all right? Because they're both in that retail trade area, but the trade that he's able to do in China is huge because of the sheer population or size of China. All right. So again, what measures or what puts these people on this list back in 2021 was the amount of profit that their companies or their organizations were able to generate, and therefore that's why they're seen as top leader businessmen. Does it mean that what they did was good for the environment, good for the world? All right, so that's a question. If this is the only framework that we're looking at leadership through, is it the best type of leadership parameter to measure success, profits? All right, so that's one view that we look at. Another view in which we could look at leadership is through the view of anthropology. Now, anthropology really is going to be examining cultures from the past to determine how they ran how they ran their lives, how their leaders emerged, and we do that by piecing together their lives from what is left behind. So we will go into some sort of excavation and we'll unearth whatever we get from them. We try to find out what their languages were by looking at whatever form of written text was left behind, or written language was left behind, the tools that they used, symbols that they utilized to represent themselves, and we try to get an idea of what was going on. And in that system, we observe the society and try to work out, well, how do leaders in their society emerge. So if we think about the ancient Egyptians, for example, we had the pharaohs emerging from sort of like family dynasties that emerged, and they had this mythical approach to things. If we look back at the Aztecs and the Incas, there would be families who are more important than others, and they were ruling over those. And then, how do you keep the masses in line? Well, you use various forms of religion and belief structures that indicate that your place is here and so on. So those are the things that tell us about the lives that they led, and we're able to view their world, according to as much as we can piece together without having been there. All right. 1,000 years from now, what would an archaeologist or an anthropologist find that is indicative of our lifetime? You give me some ideas. If we were 1,000 years from now and we were looking back at 2025, 2020s, what will we find that will be indicative of life in the beginning of the 21st century here? What do you think we'd find? Anything?
So I'm confused. You could rephrase or repeat.
If we imagine ourselves 1,000 years in the future, and we are the archaeologists 1,000 years in the future, what might we find in some sort of archaeological dig that will tell us about the
Plastic.
life. We right, lots of plastic. Yes. What else?
If they have access to, let me say, an ancient piece of technology,
Yeah.
they could look at the rate of progression from the last
They,
100 years, which was very
they,
rapid.
they might find a lot of bodies with this in their hand, right?
Food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either that, so they will study the generational run of Kendrick Lamar.
All right. So what about language? They might find a lot of people with strings of text and emojis and these kind of nonsense all over them, right? Not so
Yeah.
hot, and you know, how did they select their leaders in the world? Well, they had a beauty contest, and we had Miss Universe
So
and
there'd be a
Miss.
lot of lithium batteries, if even recoverable.
True, that's true. A lot of chemical and fossil fuel usage. So those are the things that we're going to find from the tools that we use, the materials that we use. Linguistically, we will get the words and text, but a lot of it will be from within the machinery that we're utilizing. The ones that will probably they will probably be able to read easiest is probably whatever mathematical binary numbers and programming that they had available. What about our culture and our leaders? How do we choose our leaders?
Food.
For the vast majority of us, we use some form of voting, right? So um, that was, and they would of course have to compare to whatever they use in 1,000 years from now in terms of the determining leadership. All right. So anthropology is an interesting view through which we could look at things. All right. So another way in which we could look at leadership is through the framework of history. All right. And in history, what we're looking at is during significant time frames in the world, you have people who emerge as major leaders or major influencers in society at that point in time. They take leading positions and roles and kind of walk us through that part of the history. Anybody recognizes these people? And can you tell me what event they were involved with?
So is
Like a
one of them
Hitler.
Hitler?
That's yeah, the guy with the small mustache is Hitler, Adolf Hitler. And what event brought these gentlemen together?
The Holocaust.
Well, not the Holocaust specifically, but another world action. Because do you
Um,
recognize the other guys?
you know,
Winston Churchill.
Right,
Mhm.
that's the guy with the bowler hat. Yes, who's he?
Uh-huh.
hmm He's Winston Churchill, but who is he in terms of his role?
Or the Prime Minister of
I can't recall.
Right. So
England.
he was. Somebody said it. He's the Prime Minister of England, of the UK at the time. The event that we're talking about here is World War II. This is where Russia, not Russia, this is where Germany engaged in occupation of massive parts of Europe and did so by either just what he called the blitzkrieg and started to occupy Europe. His objective was to eventually occupy all of the entire world, basically. And that drew, first and foremost, that drew the UK into direct confrontation with him, along with other nations like Poland and so on. Eventually, um, it ran into this gentleman here, Stalin. He was the leader of Russia at the time, and this was the beginning of the communist period, communist Russia, and they been then, I should say they, but Joseph Stalin got together with um, um, this gentleman here, Winston Churchill, and this gentleman over here. Anybody recognizes who he is?
Franklin something. I can't remember.
Roosevelt Franklin Roosevelt. Okay, he was the president of the United States at the time of World War II. And these three guys got together and beat the hell out of this guy, and led to the end of the World War II. And then right after the end of World War II, we had the beginning of the Cold War because of what they ended up doing in relation to the treatment of Joseph Stalin. By that time, however, Roosevelt had died because he died in office. and I think it's Trudeau or Truman or somebody took over. I can't remember exactly, but I think it's Truman, President Truman, took over, and between himself and Winston Churchill, they sort of isolated um, this guy here, and that led to the emergence of the Soviet Union and East Germany. For those of you who might be familiar, there was something called the Berlin Wall. It sounds familiar to anybody. Some of the older
Yes, sir.
students, all right, eventually that fell apart in the 1990s, and the Soviet Union sort of crumbled, and we have the Russia as it exists today, which is a supposed um, what's the word I want to use? Supposed democracy, but very autocratic in nature, and it's more of an oligarchy than it is than anything else. You have a very few powerful organizations and individuals in Russia that kind of control things across the board. So who's this person, and what event was he involved with from a historic
The
point of
Malcolm
view?
X.
Malcolm X.
That's
Wow.
Martin Luther King.
Right, this is Dr.
Oh
Martin
my
Luther
God.
King Jr. Malcolm X had glasses. Let's just get that one. All right, he had the "I Have a Dream" speech. Anybody familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, what event is he historically connected to?
He is connected to the civil rights movements in America in the 60s. I believe
Yep,
it was the
yep. The latter
60s.
part of the 50s and 60s. Yes, and he was assassinated. All right, in the latter part of the 60s as well during that period, because of his involvement and his influence. And but of course, in killing him, he became martyred, and has become de facto one of the people who led that whole march against the uh, separatist type of activities, or what they call Jim Crow laws and that type of stuff. Basically, about the civil rights movements in the United States, which they're still having struggles with as well. Anybody knows this gentleman? I distinctly got some very early photos of this person.
Emmett Till?
Who? Anybody knows? Anybody ever saw a film called The Black Klansman?
No, don't think so.
Okay, story of a black guy who joined the KKK and infiltrated the KKK.
Yeah,
Right?
I think I remember.
All right. This gentleman here was actually featured in that movie. In fact, in the real story of the Black Klansman, it centered around death threats to this gentleman in the United States. This gentleman, however, is a Trinidadian. His name at the time was Stokely Carmichael. Now he's called Kwame Ture, and he was a leader in the Black Power movement in the United States in the latter part of the 60s, and became synonymous with the Black Power movement and the Black Panthers. And he was viewed in the United States as somebody who was extremely dangerous. And in fact, through his influence and his teachings as well, he influenced the Black Power movement in Trinidad in the 1970s, which led to the 1970s Black Power Revolution. That sounds familiar, guys? You're familiar with that in our own personal history here?
Yes, sir. I'm familiar with
It
the
seems
name. I just
familiar.
didn't know the picture.
Yeah, well, yeah. I distinctly chose this photo because at this time, he's a he's a undergraduate student in a university in the United States. He's a black man, a black Caribbean person in the American system, and he took it. He got taken up with the whole struggle, and he got involved with that whole thing there. All right. Okay, so let's look at another group of pictures here. These are influential people in history. How many of these people can you identify? Because again, in history, and see if you can identify what event is connected with the individual. So we have a few already that we've met before. We have Stalin, we have Roosevelt, we have Winston Churchill, we have um, this guy here, the Führer, German Adolf Hitler, and we have Martin Luther King. But there's some others here. Anybody identifies any of these guys?
Yeah,
Elvis. Yeah.
Sir Mahatma Gandhi in the corner.
right? Mahatma Gandhi. What is he connected to? Aruna, you want to tell them what is Mahatma Gandhi connected to from history?
He's the nation's father.
Yes. He led
And then
in
he fight for,
independence.
yeah,
Yeah, for independence in
yeah,
India, and
in India.
unfortunately, the movement towards independence of the Indian independence also led to the creation of Pakistan and the separation, which was
Yeah,
another
yeah.
very. He was very unhappy about that particular aspect. Miss Williams, hi, Miss Williams. All right, I need to. All right, she muted her. No. All right, Miss Williams didn't know. Yes, Mr. Haven. I'm putting the picture back up. Sorry, Nicole, I see your hand up. Daily,
Right, so I believe that is Miss Margaret Thatcher by the podium.
right?
I know she's famous for being the Iron Lady and something about Brexit.
No, she wasn't involved with Brexit. She was before that time
No,
frame.
not Brexit.
No.
Something. They didn't like how she led the country.
Yeah, she was actually
Something
referred to
about the
as the witch.
Irish.
She was referred to as the
Yeah,
witch. In fact, when she died, I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was this huge international meme that went out, which was simply "Ding dong, the witch is dead," and a lot of
yeah,
people were
yeah. I
very
remember that.
upset about that. But the Margaret Thatcher was the first female prime minister of the United Kingdom, and she was a hard taskmaster because at the time she took power in the UK, the world was in a recessionary period, and she made some very tough decisions, and she dismantled a lot of the Labour Party socialist programs, and got rid of the dole, and got the dole was an unemployment relief program, and lots of other social programs, and led to a large amount of privatization of the economy, which eventually led to the UK rebounding a bit. But the way in which it was done was rather heartless. A lot of people got sent home. Miners got fired from jobs because they shut down inefficient industries and stuff like that. So she led the UK during a very rough time frame, and ended up with that moniker of the Iron Lady. Anybody else? All right, I see Nadira has her hand up.
Yes, so, Marilyn Monroe on the, well, my right bottom.
Yep. That
Yeah, she
is,
mhm.
what is she connected to?
um I know that she was involved in charities for children. I know, well, she's an actress, a model. She had her own production company, if I'm not mistaken.
Nope.
Ah, no, she didn't have her own production company, film
No.
production company.
She died
Okay.
well before she was able to do all that.
Okay.
What is she
Well,
connected to though?
mm, well, beside the,
To
kind of
what?
scandalous outlook, I can't
Well,
really think of anything else.
so the only thing you remember is, well, she actually kind of birthed the beginning of the blonde, the
Oh,
dumb blonde,
yes.
and
Yes,
that
yes,
that
yes.
look, and that vacant look type of thing. But she was a starlet who was actually very focused on what she was doing, but was never really
Hmm.
taken seriously. But she
Yes.
was at the beginning of that process of where um, television personalities became huge stars, and she was one of the first. And in fact, I think she ended up taking her life. But of course, she was involved with a lot of scandals with the Kennedys and that type of stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, and Joe DiMaggio and that type of stuff. All right. So thanks a lot, Nadira. What about Afia? Fanili, see your hand up as well.
Hi, yeah. I believe that's Fidel Castro I'm seeing there.
Right. Who's next to him with the hat?
I do not know.
Ronald Reagan. They're positioned
Okay.
close to each other because they're both involved in something. But Fidel Castro is whom? What is
He was
Castro famous for?
well, he was the former prime minister of Cuba or leader of Cuba. He was part
The
of the
premier.
movement
Mm-hmm.
to that well overthrew the leaders at the time
Uh-huh. The
and
sister
was the
government.
yeah, and he was well, he initiated a communist
Not
leadership
communist.
style,
Nope, not communist. Socialist. There's a difference.
socialist.
Mm. In fact, the reason why he's positioned next to Ronald Reagan and above these two gentlemen here, and we'll get to them in a bit if for anybody who recognizes them, is because for years, even to this day, there is a big gulf between Cuba and the United States because when Fidel Castro took power, he basically threw the Americans out and never gave them any sort of compensation for all of the businesses that they lost. He just took over everything and started, as you said, a regime of socialism. And it led to a huge divide between the southern states in the United States, in particular, especially in Miami and that peninsula down there, with the United with Cuba, and that led to currently still have embargoes and bans on movement of people and that type of stuff between the two countries. So yes, with Cuba, you also have the missile crisis. But there are no pictures of John F. K. here, but these two gentlemen here were the premiers of the Soviet Union at the time. Well, this one get with his hand in the air is Khrushchev. He was one of the most vociferous ones and very who was it kind of came to the head where he was really on top of people during the Cold War period. And this gentleman here is Gorbachev, who sort of ended Russia, the Soviet Union, and led to the emergence of Russia and the fall of the Berlin Wall. All of that period came under his watch as the last premier of the Soviet Union. So they're all connected in that thing because they're all around the same area or the same time frame. All right, that was Nadira. Sorry, no, Mr. Ramhat, and then we'll go to Alon Daly and
Well,
yes,
Neil Armstrong next to Hitler up there.
right, huge
First man on the moon,
first man on the
allegedly.
moon, significant there about the space race. Excellent,
And well, the Beatles on the bottom there. I
right?
believe. Yeah.
Yep, that's the Beatles. So what
The,
is the Beatles connect? Well, the reason why Beatles
they,
and Elvis Presley are put together is
yeah,
because of.
music. They quote unquote revolutionized music, as people say,
Hmm.
but that was far before my time. So can't really.
Well, well, true, but what they were able to do was that they were able to take a lot of music that was previously ignored by the mainstream and bring it into the forefront. In fact, they accused the Beatles in particular of borrowing a lot of music from black artists from the United States um, and performing with them or taking their material and using it for themselves, which
They,
is not really the case.
yeah,
What they were heavily
this
influenced by
that
them.
how the Beatles use their cadences or whatever to
Correct.
make
Yes.
money off of it. Basically, that was the big. I remember I looked into it a lot in the past.
Uh,
A lot of persons back then, the rappers and stuff like that, quote
right.
unquote, they
Talked about it. Yeah.
yeah they talked about how the Beatles as four white men used their cadences to make money off it, and they became so famous and all this.
Yeah. Elvis Presley did the same thing too.
Well, yeah,
All right. Now the thing about it is that the evidence is there because, but the difference is that what they were able to do was to put a white face on black music, and it became more acceptable, which eventually led to the emergence of things like Motown and that type of stuff happening and coming and becoming more mainstream as well. So though there's a lot of accusations about them borrowing a lot from that group of individuals or that influence, if it wasn't for them, that type of music would still be looked upon as being negative music and not the kind of music that we listen to today. R&B, popular music today is heavily influenced by what these guys did in the past. All right. Okay. Anybody else you wanted to recognize, or should I move on to Janine?
No,
I'm
you
sorry,
can go ahead.
Jian. All
You
right,
can go.
Jian.
Yeah, I was also going to point out the Beatles. One fact, they basically started the first British invasion or
Right.
British wave in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna point out Elvis, as you just said,
Uh
right
huh.
next to them. Um, Basically proclaimed the king of rock, but not really.
King of rock and roll. There's a difference.
Yeah, king of rock and roll, but not really. I don't really see him as that, but
Oh no, he was prolific in his time frame. Very, very,
yeah,
very,
his
very.
time period.
Yeah,
In
but
his time period.
yeah, in his heyday. But he got. If you ever looked at the movie they recently did about Elvis, did you by chance?
Yeah, the Baz Luhrmann.
Right. The he was sidelined by the guy who managed him, the colonel. Because
Mhm.
if he was able to travel and move around the world, he would have probably done a lot better than he actually ended up
Yeah,
doing.
he would have done better.
Yeah, I felt it was such a horrible thing the way he his because I mean you have to also think about the genius of his music as well too. So pretty much like the Beatles as well, because in 1980s, John Lennon was shot and assassinated. That ended. Well, the Beatles had broken up before then, but I mean that ended a whole set of creativity there. Ashwood,
That is true.
yeah, okay. Ashwood, see your hand up.
Yes, sir. I was trying to recognize Adolf Hitler.
Hitler. Yeah, well, we spoke about
Yeah.
him a bit. Yeah, yeah, but of course
Oh,
he's really attached. Well, with him, this gentleman here, well, more so with him, this gentleman here, this gentleman there, and here. They're all about from the World War II era,
right, right.
and particularly for that thing. All right, so nice little exercise there, guys. Let's move along. All right. All right, so one of the last frame or references that we're going to be utilizing is leadership seen through psychology and sociology. So psychology is going to look at individual behavior. Sociology tries to look at explaining group behavior in society. So these three gentlemen here, this is Sigmund Freud on the left. He is arguably the father of modern psychology and psychoanalysis. This gentleman here is Karl Marx. He's actually famous for a lot of things, but more so, he's a sociologist who studied, who tried to, postulated some of the best theories that explain social behavior or society. And then we have this gentleman here who few people might know. His name is B.F. Skinner. He's integral in the development of behavioral sciences, especially in the field of education. B.F. Skinner is especially associated with the development of adult education, and their theories became the backbone of a lot of the leadership theories that we are going to look at in the course. So these are the different leadership theories that we are going to look at. And all of them have some relation to what we've looked at in the past. All right. In the next presentation, we're going to be looking at that. So the question that we want to ask here is, um, how does your field of study or your field of employment approach leadership? How do people arrive in positions of leadership in your field of study? So I see Mr. Ashford, your hand is still up. Can you tell me what field of study are you in again?
Radiography, so.
Right. So how do people arrive in positions of leadership in the field of radiography?
Well, from my experience, I would say it will be based on leadership, experience, the
So
years you're in the field,
right.
along with your qualifications.
There you go. Right. So a combination of training and experience. Yes.
Yeah,
And that's how you end
yeah.
up in a situation. Good. And you agree with that. You're fine with the way in which that works.
Well, to some extent, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So what's your hesitation about? What part don't you agree with?
Well, you see, I mean, because like technology is is expanding, every day we go by. And I think like some of these traditional persons, they're not so equipped with these technologies that they have right now available. And because of that, is like, sometimes it kind of cause conflicts, in departments per se,
All right, because they're not up to
because,
date. All
yeah.
right. We're actually going to touch on that a little bit today. All right, but the fine thing to bring up there. All right, so I want to just ask Miss Garcia, what field of study are you in?
So in the same field radiography, and I was
Oh,
just going to say that I agree with what he said
what he just said. Okay.
about the technology and so. Because this might sound bad, but
Mm-hmm.
some of the older people sometimes they doesn't be as capable as us, the younger people, and they doesn't. They like said that they don't take the younger people a chance.
Mm, true. And there may be two reasons for that. One, you have to remember a lot of the older people weren't born into the technology, and therefore they're a little intimidated by it unless, of course, they do something about it. And of course, that comes and that level of intimidation can create a bit of a lack of confidence, and therefore they're going to double down on if they hold positions of leadership. They're going to kind of double down on that. Right? So you have to understand why more than anything else. Right? So we look at that and see. What about Mackenzie, Carissa Mackenzie? What field are you in, Miss Brown? All right, so maybe she can't. How about Chelsea?
So I'm doing my business administration,
Uh huh.
HR specifically.
Right. So how do people end up in to
I
be the
guess,
manager
well,
of
you could gain work experience, and of course education plays like a
qualifications?
big
Right.
factor. Yeah.
Yeah. And but one of the things that really plays a bigger role is the amount of related experience you develop.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much for sharing, guys. All right. So I want to move into the relational leadership model, but I want to offer us a 10-minute break first before we go into here because it's the sort of the second part of the presentation. Would that be okay with everybody? Thumbs up if you're okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's take a break, take a stretch, take a walk. I'm not going to turn off the recording. We're going to leave the space in it. All right. For now. All right. So I'll see you all in about 10 minutes. All right. Okay. All right, guys. We back on. Everybody's back in class. Did have a film company. All right, okay. I stand corrected. Thank you very much. So Nadira has put in the chat. She had a film company in the 1950s. It didn't really take off though, yes, because and then died in the 60s. So yeah, I think she was trying to find a safe way to do to avoid the kind of cast and couch nonsense that was taking place in the industry at that time. Because I guess the main reason that she was so uh, famous is she got a lot of abuse. Apparently, I think there's a recent biopic on her, um, almost a biography on her. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Marilyn or the Blonde or something along those lines. All right, something for you guys to go and look. Actually, I would recommend you guys go and look at the Black Klansman. Learn a little bit about Kwame Ture. Um, uh, so that's your homework. Go and look at the Black Klansman. Maybe you could find that movie on the Marilyn Monroe as well. All right, is everybody back? Thumbs up if everybody's here. You guys hearing me at all? All right. Ooh, sorry. Now seeing the thumbs up. All right. Thank you very much, guys. All right. So let's get cracking. Um, so the framework that we're going to be looking at, or the model that we're going to be looking at, is called the relational leadership model. And the relational leadership model has a heavy focus or heavy reliance on the last area that we were talking about, the psychology, sociology, and educational development in theory development that came up, and it requires some things. So let's look at the framework. It requires one, learning about yourself, which is one of your assessments, your self-assessment. Self-awareness in the context of others. That's the second presentation. Understanding self and understanding others. Those two chapters deal specifically about developing that concept. Understanding your personal values, beliefs, and commitments. That has to do with your ethical values. And what you need to do is you really do need to spend some time learning about how you feel about these things and what are your true values. Unless you engage in that, it sometimes can be a little mystery to you. But self-awareness is a difficult process for some people. If you've never gone about doing self-analysis and really truly kind of understanding yourself, it can be a painful journey. And for most people, it's an eye opening exposition in terms of truly understanding who you are and why you are the way you are. All right, because a lot of things happen in your life that guide your development if you think about it from a psychological point of view. Um, so, this is kind of like your own journey, your own autobiography, which is one of the reasons why I like looking at autobiographical movies and stuff like that, because you get an insight into the individual. In that development, we have to, of course, we spoke about the development of self-awareness. We also have to develop the skills of effective listening, the ability to work with others, collaboration, and the ability to compromise and engage in those activities over and over again and practice them to get them better. Of the five things here that we have listed, one of the most interesting and difficult is, in fact, effective listening, and it's at the cornerstone of collaboration and compromise. Now, I want to ask a question. Are there any communication students among us here in class? Just show of hands. Communication or graphics program people? No? All right. Let me ask Clarissa if she's here. Not Clarissa, but Clarissa. To answer the question, what do you think effective listening is? All right. Clarissa may still be in her on her way home. What about Miss Walcott? Jolene.
Yes, sir.
Hi. What do you think? What is effective listening?
Um, it could be listening carefully So
Uh-huh.
what CRN said so that they could give the right to response.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anybody else wants to chime in? Yes. Snags?
So I would say probably listening to comprehend, like to understand the other person, whatever the other person is saying.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you're listening for what we refer to as mutual understanding. Okay, cool. Um, what do we need to do, Mr. Kura, to truly listen to somebody else? There's some processes that have to take place,
Well, firstly, let them speak.
right?
Um,
Okay. So that's the mechanics. What else? It's something we have to do internally.
So I could try.
Yes, of course.
I would say body language or eye contact as well.
All right. So those are the mechanics of communication still. Body language, in that you have to lean and pay attention, maintain eye contact. Of course, this is dependent upon if the person is returning eye contact because you have to be careful with eye contact.
So
Um,
give them your undivided
Un-
attention.
yes, that's true. All right. That,
Understanding what they're saying.
right. But all right. How do we go about arriving at that understanding, Nadir?
um, Probably by leaving our opinion out of it while they explain themselves.
Exactly. What is that? What is that referring to, Nadira? Well, Nadir was kind of answering, but then Nadira stepped in. But between the two of you all, I think you're hitting the point that I'm trying to get to.
So I want to say engage.
Well,
Engage with the speaker.
that's process wise, but there's something that
So no
internally,
interrupting.
no interrupting. Yes, that's true. That's again process oriented, but I think it was Nadira that was kind of focused on on us doing something, which is stop doing something. What was it, Nadira, you talked about?
So Nadira or Nadir?
One of you all did it.
I think
I think you
Nadir
talking
said,
about,
don't
I
give
said,
opinions, something so.
no, I said
Yes.
understanding, but somebody come in and say, leave your opinion out there. I'm not too sure who it was.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get
I
there.
don't know who it was.
Oh, so yeah, that was me.
Who's
Snacks.
me? Who's
Snacks.
Snugs? So Snugs, I need you to elaborate on that because you're on the right track there. What do you mean by um, what do you mean by what you said? Because this is
I
probably
don't
the
know,
crook.
just because I feel like if you thinking that you right all the time, you wouldn't be able to understand what the other person is coming from. So you wouldn't be able to have a conversation with them to effectively listen to what they're saying. So you need to sit back and have an open mind
Okay,
so they
good.
that could explain themselves so you could understand what they
Uh,
say.
right. Okay. Is it important for you to respond to them?
Depending on the situation, after they finish explaining themselves, I guess if they want a response, you could respond.
Yeah. So a response is not necessarily critical. It is the act of listening without judging. And to do that, we have to turn off our own internal biasness because that's the biggest block to what we have to do when we're listening to people. So to effectively listen to people, yes, we have to focus on them. Yes, we have to pay attention. We have to maintain eye contact. We have to watch all our body language cues. But more importantly, we actually have to pay attention to making sure we are not inadvertently judging the person during the process. Now, this is easy if we are talking about things that we have, very light opinions about, or we are in agreement with the person's position on something that they're talking about. But what happens when you're talking to somebody and their opinion or what they're speaking about upsets you, or you have a diametrically opposed opinion to it? What happens then?
Tension.
For you or for them?
Well, well, not for me particularly, but generally for people, it tends to get tense
All right, so
because
Nadira,
difference in opinions not always the welcoming thing for
Right.
most
Well,
people.
true. All right. So Nadir, I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot. How do you feel about abortion? What's your stance on that?
Abortion, um,
Are you pro-choice, pro-life?
to be honest, I am kind of on the fence.
Okay.
I do think that it is a choice, and certain circumstances may call for it, which is why I
Right.
think it's pro-choice. But then at the same time, if we give um that legal ability to everybody, we're gonna have economical issues, political issues, amongst others. So kind of on the fence. I have my opinions on both sides.
You think you don't have an opinion, but you just stated one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you think it needs limited access. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, I have opinion on both. So
No, what you want is you want pro-choice for some people, but not for others.
I think it should be allowed, but there should be
Like,
certain limits to it.
okay,
You
what
know,
limits?
I don't know. So let's say,
I don't think limit
if
is what you're looking for. I think she more means
if it's legal,
circumstances.
yeah,
So
if it's
in certain
legal, you have to give
circumstances,
proof of your circumstances. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you have to justify why you want an abortion.
Yes. I think that's
So,
the only.
what
Mhm.
criteria would you set up for wanting to have an abortion?
Mm, well, of course, the sexual abuse
All
part to
right.
it. Any abuse actually, as a matter of fact, that has to do with, that.
Well, uh-huh.
Um, what is another one? Any medical problems, medical
Right, medical.
conditions.
Yeah.
Um, what else?
How old are you,
I
Nadira?
22.
Okay. Um, so you're 16 years old and you get pregnant. What
Mm-hmm.
happens?
So, not for everybody. For a lot of people, not good things, but for some people, good things.
No, what I'm saying, you're 16 years old. You're under the age of consent. Well, let me make it even more. You're 13 years old and you're pregnant. What happens?
You have to have that baby.
Why?
Uh,
Because in this
because
country, for that
because it's
person,
illegal.
really?
Isn't
I
it
mean, in
illegal? I
this
believe
country,
it
it
is.
is. It's illegal to have an
Yeah,
abortion, right?
yeah,
Abortions
yeah.
aren't permitted, except in the cases of, as you talked about, medical reasons or in situation of rape. But technically, at 13 years old, she was raped, regardless of whether or not she consented, because the age of consent is not 13, it's
Yeah, it's not.
14.
Yeah, it's 18. Yeah,
No,
still.
it's 14.
It's 14.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
In
goodness.
Trinidad, it's 14.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's 14 or 15, somewhere around there.
I thought it was at least 16.
You'd be
What?
surprised. It's
We
called,
give consent to those
other
things
than
at
that,
such a
it
young age?
other than that, it's called statutory rape.
Huh.
All right. So understand
Well,
you have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old getting together, being boyfriend and girlfriend. They engage in some sexual activity, obviously, as pre-teenagers or teenagers. The girl gets pregnant. The boy goes to jail because,
mm-hmm.
right, because he's now charged with rape. And do you know what happens to somebody who goes to jail charged with rape?
Well, they themselves,
Yeah, they become a
have to
plaything for
be.
other people,
Yeah,
and not
they
in a
become a
nice
victim
way,
themselves.
right?
Yeah,
And what happens to the girl? She has to have that child.
yeah.
And then what happens to her life?
Well, it's dedicated to the child because
Uh-huh.
that's what parenthood is.
At 13 to 14 years old. You
Yeah.
understand now the challenges that I'm talking about. So we're talking about trying to come to grips with something that you don't necessarily. So now let's put you in another situation, a predicament.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have a 13-year-old niece who comes to you and tells you that she's pregnant and she's
Hmm.
looking to get a backdoor abortion.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. So what do you do?
So she's coming to me for the help, you're saying, or
She's
my
coming to you for
advice?
advice and for
Okay.
help.
I would I would strongly um try to influence her to have the discussion, a calm discussion with her
With
parents, with her parents, because I am not the type. If my sister brother would kill me, so a productive discussion with the
mm.
parents,
Mm-hmm.
and also keeping in also um having my niece's input very highly considered as well, because at the end of the day it's her body,
And
but
her
her parents
life.
has to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
um and well, that's the only thing I can say. I wouldn't say
Right.
go ahead, I wouldn't say don't do it. That's the only step, that's the next step I would take.
All right. Of course, by that time, you're complicit, okay? Let's suppose she went ahead and had the abortion. Regardless of what you tried to do, she went ahead and she had the abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're complicit to a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Which in
So
in
so
in
we what
our
would do then?
case, sorry,
So we would do say the
what
first
would
thing I
I
would do is
do?
talk to her parents. What would you do?
Uh,
Yeah.
Me, I actually helped my friend have an abortion once.
You helped her?
Hmm.
So you were complicit too?
Yes, I was. I
Oh my.
have committed homicide.
Oh,
I was
all right.
complicit. That's the charge, and the charge is
Yeah.
homicide, aiding and abetting. But she was young. She didn't have, and she got pregnant for the wrong person. The family would not have accepted any offspring from that person with her,
Mm-hmm.
and she had an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And she needed support during the period, and unfortunately, I was the only person who was available to assist her. And again, for me, it was her choice. She wanted to do it. It's illegal in this country, but it's available, and it was better that she did it with somebody who's qualified and knows what they're doing, rather than
Mm-hmm.
because it's rather expensive actually. And it was expensive back then too. So it's it this is the issue that you have to come across, that I'm trying to point at with effective listening, and its problems. Two things get in the way. One, our own personal bias to an issue. Second, your emotional connection to the individual. Those two things make effective listening difficult, and it requires a lot of practice. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
You realize that you cannot listen to somebody you love, be it
No,
somebody,
you can't.
right?
You can't.
Because you can't. But those are the one sets of individuals who you should practice effective listening the
Mm-hmm.
most,
Mm-hmm.
because the decisions and discussions that you're having are even more critical. But it's the most difficult to do. You have to put it into practice. In the past, I used to use an exercise with my class to listen to music of different types, and listen for the message in the music. The easier ones that they were able to get the message from was music that they liked. But the minute I started to utilize different forms of music that people didn't like, they had lots of problems getting beyond their emotional response to it, and not listening to the message coming from the music or the song. You understand? That's a piece of practice that you can try on yourself. Another technique is to listen to talk radio, and listen and try and understand the 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 point of view of somebody with whom you do not agree with what they say. But at least what you need to do is to focus on trying to understand them and what they are trying to get. You follow me? That's what effective listening is, and it's not easy. It is something that requires practice and constant practice. I mean, I still struggle with it, especially with people who I have emotional connections to, because it hurts when you hear them talk about things. I mean, with age it's gotten a little better because I've been practicing it a lot, but it's still a challenge. To this day, it's still a big challenge. All right, so let's look at some other foundation principles for leadership that we have to be taking note of. First off, leadership concerns us all. Now, the problem with this is the younger we are, the tendency to look at leadership as being unimportant is something that is rampant. The younger we are, we tend to, that is old people thing, that is politics, that is them people thing. The fact of the matter is that if you really sit and think about it, the decisions that the leadership makes, be it in the economy, policy, laws, and governance in the country, they directly impact upon our lives. So it is important for us to take note of leadership. But at the same time, we must appreciate that as we work with other people, as leaders and followers, that leadership in itself is viewed and valued differently by everybody. So some people view it as being critical, like I do, and some people view it as being, Monday could fall on Tuesday, I don't care. Whoever's in charge, it doesn't matter, it's the same old, same old. All right. Additionally, we have to be accepting of the fact that leadership is not a static thing. Leaders have to be flexible. They have to be able to change with time and adjust, as some of you all were speaking about before. All right, in terms of some of the leaders that you are having, and they're unable to or unwilling to change and accept new technology and that type of stuff. Um, Different situations call for different types of leadership techniques, and we will get into that in a little later, a little more depth into that. And the last one is that leadership is something that can be learned and developed in individuals. Far too long, we have this adage that leaders are born, not made. The reality is that research has not proven one way or the other that there's a genetic connection between people who are leaders and those who are not leaders. So genetically, there's this concept of a leadership gene. Um, for those of you who end up doing the research in it, you will come across that leadership gene in your research, hopefully, and you'll understand the argument about leaders and leadership. The one thing they have been able to develop, though, is an understanding that most people who are successful leaders tend to also be psychotic individuals. Point to note. Okay. All right. So, in order for us to help develop ourselves in terms of our abilities in leadership, it means first we must commit to high ethical standards, and we have to encourage change in others and change in ourselves and be socially responsible. We have to exhibit critical thinking, we have to exhibit credibility, authenticity, integrity, and the highest levels of ethical conduct. Now, anything you do to affect your authenticity affects your integrity and credibility. If you lie, if you bend the truth, it affects everything, and it affects other people trusting you. And once you interfere with that, everything is like a house of cards, it just crumble. The one element I want to point out is critical thinking. Critical thinking is something that means you question everything and ask why. But far too early in our lives, we have been told to not think critically, just accept what I say. Think about children, for those of you who have children, and the constant questions of why this mommy, why that daddy, why do we do this, why are we doing that, what is this about, and that natural quest for information and understanding is normal. But what happens in the classroom, or what happens eventually when a parent gets upset or is they don't have time to answer all those questions? What ends up happening? We tell them to shut up, we tell them to keep quiet, sit down and listen. Not so? How many of you all experience this in classrooms? Think about it.
Me.
Everybody here. Because first and foremost, you were put into a classroom and you were put to sit in lines, in desks, in orderly lines. You were told to keep quiet and listen to your teacher. All right? There are a couple of programs that actually encourage critical thinking, but the problem with it is that critical thinking is a difficult skill to maintain, and for far too long in our education system, and for big portions of it, right up to secondary school, we keep on telling people, shut up and listen, shut up and listen. You're not ready to start thinking critically. But the fact of the matter is, by that time, critical thinking, along with creativity, has probably been suppressed in you to the point that We are unable to exercise those muscles anymore because they become paralyzed. They no longer work simply because they've been suppressed for far too long. So this is something that we have to revisit in our education system. And unfortunately for you guys, you are now required to develop critical thinking, which means you have to go through that exercise all over again and start working those muscles again. So you start to realize that critical thinking is something that is um, a little tricky because even leaders don't like people with too much critical thought for the simple reason that it makes it difficult to manage an individual who is critical of what you do. They will question what you do at all points. Now you're not questioning somebody for just questioning sake. You're questioning to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Is there alternatives that we could be utilizing? Is there possibly a different method that we can utilize that might utilize less resources, or is it better across the board? You're thinking about all of the options altogether. That's what critical thinking should always be about. But we have to practice getting into that. So it's something that, as I said before, it's something that has been moved from our skills from a very early age, and now that we've ended up in this environment, now we are required to re-engage critical thinking and creativity all of a sudden, and the education system doesn't support critical thinking, nor does it support creativity. We must stay in these little cookie cutter blocks and follow along. As long as you follow along with what everybody does, you'll be successful. If you are outside that box, if you're outside that cookie, you're looked upon as being strange, you're looking at being weird, people will ignore you, that type of stuff. So there's a whole host of different things you have to pay attention to in relation to that. But it's a set of skills that is going to be critical, both as a leader and as followers. Um, it's just that sometimes leaders don't appreciate it. All right, so there are three basic principles to help develop our process. So we keep on coming back to this thing. We start back with the concept of knowing. You must know yourself. You must know how change takes place in the environment around us and in yourself. You must know how and why others view things differently than you do. This is critical because that last one there, understanding why other people see things differently, is more important after or becomes is important because you have to understand other people in order to be able to fairly engage with them. If you don't understand where they're coming from, then you have this barrier against what's taking place. Let's look at this. All right, Mr. Cummings, what are you seeing here? Is Mr. Cummings, Javon Cummings, available?
Yes, sir.
All right, what are you seeing? What picture is this?
Seeing a woman watching herself in the mirror,
Uh huh.
and at the same time, I seeing a skull.
Right. So it's one of those kind of pictures that has um, dimension to it, right? So there are different elements that we could look at from it. Yeah, makes sense. Do you see the
Yeah.
teeth? What makes up the teeth of the skull?
Um, her, don't know what exactly it is. So I will see apparatus on the table.
Well, it's products, it's like cosmetics and bottles and stuff like that. It looks like the teeth of the thing, and of course the drape that's coming down here looks like the neck area of the skull, and the what we will call this the tablecloth, with the strings attached. Interesting. Everybody agrees with Mr. Cummings in terms of what he sees.
Yes, sir.
Yep. All right. So let's look at this, Mr. Cummings. You again. What do you see here?
Um, a good one. I see. Look like a woman, and I don't know if it's a
What's the woman
wolf. I
doing?
don't know.
What's the woman doing?
Gazing, I guess.
Gazing in which direction?
Hmm.
Is she looking over her shoulder or is she looking down?
Mm,
All right, let me ask you: is it an old woman or
down.
a young woman you seen?
A young woman, I
Uh
think.
huh. And she's kind of like looking over her shoulder, looking away from us. Yeah.
Yeah,
So she's looking like over here somewhere, and that's a like a feather on top of no, a scarf around her head, kind of thing. Yeah.
correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Seen anything else there, Mr. Cummings? No. All right. Anybody? Everybody seeing that young lady looking over her shoulder?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is anybody seeing anything else? Yes, Patrice. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing the young lady looking over her shoulder, and I'm also seeing that old depressed looking lady looking down.
Yes. Oh, okay. Is anybody else seeing a an older woman looking down who looks depressed?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes,
Fin-
sir.
yeah, some people seeing it. Who's not seeing the old woman looking down?
I know, see it.
Not seen it.
Put your hands up.
Same.
Let's see how many people not seeing it. Wow, lots of people. All right, let's do a little exercise and let's see if we can straighten that out for you. So we would agree that we everybody is seeing the young woman looking over her shoulder to the away from us. Is that so,
Yes,
or
sir.
is there's are there any persons not seeing the young lady looking over? Remember to put your hands down. Answer this question first. Is there anybody who hasn't seen that young lady looking over her shoulder? I see two hands still up. Haven and Williams. What are you all not seeing?
So I didn't hear the last part of what they said. They had a bit of noise.
So, Miss Williams, there's supposed to be. Are you seeing the young lady looking over her shoulder?
Yes, sir.
All right, but you're not seeing the old woman.
No, sir.
All right, okay. So we're gonna straighten that up because you're not alone. Mr. Rahmat, I see your mic open. You wanted to ask a question? Put your hand down, Williams.
No, sorry.
All right. Okay, so we want to see this old woman looking down. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to close your eyes and don't don't look at anything. Just close your eyes and dismiss the picture. Sort of also twist your head a little bit to the right. So you're looking at the picture on your, kind of tilt your head a little bit. Don't open your eyes yet. Okay, so when I tell you to open your eyes, you're going to open your eyes and you're going to look at the screen and you're going to follow what I have to say to you and follow the mouse, my mouse marks. All right, so let's begin. So open your eyes. There is an old lady who appears to be looking a bit depressed. She's looking down into her fur jacket or fur coat. This is the fur coat that she's wearing. This is her chin. This is her mouth. This is her rather large nose. This is one of her eyes with an eyelash there. And this is the other eye that we can just see the eyelash poking over the nose. This is the front or the front of her hair under this scarf that's covering her head. This is the old lady looking down. This is her chin tucked into the coat. This is her mouth that's in a straight line or, turned down, not smiling. This is her nose. This is her eye. This is the eyelash that we can see over the nostril or the top of the nose. And this is her hair falling over her forehead. This is a scarf that she's wearing around her head. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
I still not seen it.
Yes, sir.
All right. So now that you've seen the old lady and you've also seen the young lady, this picture is no longer a mystery to you. You can see both images. You just kind of have to change your perspective a little bit. Follow? Everybody's following? Now, what is this an exercise in? This is an exercise in perception. It takes effort to see something else that other people see. Now, I've been using this exercise quite a bit, and everybody can see, most people can see the young lady very quickly, but the older woman takes a little more work. Why is that? Generally, this is used in a personality test. And if you can see the, depending on what you see first, it tells something about your personality. I'm yet to see that being right or wrong. Um, but there are lots of the different visual exercises that you can use that you can try and see. Lots of them online doing that. But one of the things that I'm trying to say to you is that it takes effort to understand somebody else. And it's important because then we end up with a situation like this. Look at this picture. Both of these individuals are arguing with each other about what they're looking at. What recommend to me what should happen there for them to understand each other?
Swap places.
Swap places. Yes. Yes, Euclid. Euclid, go ahead. What were you going to add?
Yeah, swap places or
Right.
stand on the same side, both of them.
Correct. Both of them. And because in essence, a lot of times when we argue with people, we're arguing a difference in perception, not in in reality. Right? But to each individual, the perception that you have is the reality. You follow? I remember a long time ago, I heard a statement and I thought it was absolutely bonkers. And the person said to me, reality is relative. And they're right. Reality is relative based upon what you're doing. So if I was this person on this side here, I'm seeing the 9. Unless I take the journey around to the other person's side, I will not see the 6. And that's the effort we require as a leader or as people looking to understand other people. We have to walk that mile in that person's shoes to see life from their perspective. This is just a small example or a small illustration of what we're talking about, trying to come to grips with other people's perspectives. That's really important because it's really important for us to understand other people and understand why they are seeing things the way they see it. It's so simple in this little image, but it becomes more complicated with the whole host of different problems that we face in society around us. You follow what I'm talking about? As simple as this picture is, it speaks to a bigger issue that a lot of the conflict that we face in life around us is a matter of perception. Okay? And if we took the time to try to see somebody else's point of view and understand them, you don't have to agree with them. At the end of the day, you don't have to agree with the point of view that they have, but you have to at least understand why they're seeing it that way. Okay? And you'd be surprised how much less conflict you'll engage in as a result. All right. So the second of the third element, or the three elements that we want to look at, is the being part. So we talk about the knowing. This part here is you must be ethical, you must be principled, you must be open, you must be caring, and you must be inclusive. All right. Hardest part here is going to be the last one, the inclusivity. When we develop or we have very high standards, principles, and ethical values, we have a tendency to become less tolerant of other people who represent things outside our firm beliefs. So let's engage in a discussion here again. I want to pick on somebody. Anybody willing to be a guinea pig? Looking for a guy this time. Nick on Haven. All right. So open your mic. Let's have a conversation here now. Right. How are you with trans people?
I'm not the believe that they can do whatever they want as long as it doesn't affect me.
But this is going to affect you directly because you have an organization. People are
Hmm.
coming into your organization, and they have an alternative lifestyle where they are born male, but they believe themselves, they see themselves as being female. So they're coming into your
How does that
organization. How
how
open
does
and
this affect?
well, it depends
Okay.
on what type. Of,
Um. So the first question I would ask is, how would their identity would influence the environment and affect work?
mm-hmm.
And then through that, if I can accommodate
Well,
them,
let's start to engage in that. So if a guy perceives himself to be a woman, and
hmm
in your work environment you have dedicated bathroom facilities for men and women, which bathroom are they going to be using?
there, I think the best option would to build a separate bathroom if the finances permit.
oh, oh boy, sucker. So,
Why go through the money if you could walk around it?
but you see, you're not being inclusive because what you've done there is you've ignored the fact that they have chosen a gender, and they're going to tell you that. You have
Okay,
dismissed their pronoun, so to speak. You understand?
okay. Then, but what if instead we could educate them instead of being we excluding them from the race of male and thing,
Uh-huh.
we ask for the consideration of people who are uncomfortable. Because we are being considerate of them, wouldn't it be the same for them to be considerate of us?
But again, you're in charge of the organization, right? So if
Then the next
you
step would
right, so it means that if you set up the precedent of being inclusive to an individual who is male but identifies as being female, and you don't your position, your value, your standard is something that has to be across the board in the entire organization. You follow the challenge here. I'm not saying that you're going to be faced with this, but this is a challenge of inclusivity.
okay. Well, in that case,
Uh huh.
as contributor to myself, I would think I would let them use their um respective bathrooms because I have a friend who's part of the LGBT
Uh huh.
community,
Yeah.
and they still use the bathroom for
Mm,
their biological sex.
right. Which is
So,
understandable, but then think about how some of the men respond to somebody who comes in to a bathroom made up as a woman.
huh?
You
Then
understand? it,
yeah,
it, it is uncomfortable for both sides. It's uncomfortable for females to have a male come in dressed up as a woman, and it'll be uncomfortable for men who are in a bathroom with a guy who's dressed, a individual who's dressed up like a man, or presents as a man, sorry, a man who presents as a woman from a biological sense. You understand the challenge of inclusivity. I'm using an extreme thing just to kind of get you to open this discussion. I see Sakura has a question that she wants to ask, or a point that she wants to. What contribution you want to make, Miss Snags? See your hand up, Miss
So
Snags.
I was just
Uh huh.
confused because recently, because in my brain, transgenders were the ones that got surgery, right? Anybody else
No,
was just
no,
cross-dressers. That is what I
no,
was thinking.
no. That's
So
what you're
when I
thinking.
hear
Okay,
people talking about if a man put on woman clothes,
you're
they
thinking of
and they
cross
think there's
dressing.
a woman, I
Yeah.
was like, that's cross-dressing. So I was like, for the whole bathroom topic, if it is transgender and they did the surgery, then it shouldn't have any problem with them going in the
Right.
bathroom.
that was my thought process as well.
Right. But
So
it's
I
not as
But
didn't
simple
then
as
know
that. It's not as
that,
simple as that. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. You have those because surgery is something that is like what's the word I want to use? Surgery means that you've finally made a selection, but it's a process that they have to go through a lot of. One, we don't have sex reassignment surgeries available here in Trinidad. It has to be done somewhere else. All right. A lot of I think a lot of guys go to Venezuela to get it done here, or they used to. Um, but I know they usually have to go to the states to get it done because there's a lot of difficult bits and pieces of surgery that have to go on with that for in that case there. That goes a little beyond the scope of what I'm talking about because what we're really talking about here is the challenge of being inclusive when when we have our own positions on things makes it difficult. It's also difficult to care about somebody if they don't fall into those neat little boxes that we create for others. All right, and that's something that Branston, this quotation from Branston here, is really good. Having a personality of caring about people is important. You can't be a good leader unless you generally like people and care about them. That only when that happens you can bring out the best in them. And this is a really good quotation from Richard Branston. He's the CEO and founder of Virgin Records, Virgin Atlantic, and a number of other businesses. Of which he would always tell you, first couple of businesses he opened, he failed miserably until he eventually got into that got some success. And this is something that he found important. And this is important because we talked about it here. The being part is we have to care. Regardless of how we may think about an individual and their choices, we still have to care about them as simply being human. All right? The challenge then becomes to be inclusive in my thoughts, my deeds, my actions towards these individuals. Tolerance is a serious issue in our country. We don't tolerate differences very well, especially when it comes to all right. So in and around the city centers, you might have slightly different look at things, but the further away from city centers you get, the level of tolerance um, declines rapidly as we start to move into rural areas. All right, so let's leave that alone. The third part is the doing part. You must act in a socially responsible manner, consistently and congruently, as you work in your community, as you are involved in the world around you. So when you talk about your community, I'm talking about your work, you're talking about church, we're talking about where you live, the neighborhood you're in. You have to act in that manner, in a socially responsible manner, consistently and congruently in all walks of life, in essence. All right? Consistently means that you are regardless of what part of the your home or you're at work, you behave in the same way or you're consistent with your treatment of different issues in the same manner. Congruently means that in all walks of life you have it congruently across the board. All right, we understand that. All right, so when we talk about social responsibility, this is usually something that we talk about with companies, but there's also personal social responsibility that we'll visit in a little bit. But that's the principle of ensuring that besides profit generation for a company or corporation, they should also behave in a way that positively impacts the society or the world. Now, this is something you see a lot of companies or firms have to treat with because inherently in their actions, they are damaging the environment and they're damaging the world. Think about oil companies. Think about energy generation, plastics, chemical companies. All these places are producing goods, and in their production process alone, they are damaging the environment and they have a negative impact. So, what ends up happening is that most of these companies have a corporate side that tries to show corporate responsibility and tries to do things to kind of take away from the fact that what a lot of their actions are doing is negative, so they have to do something positive to make it up. So it's sort of like a scale. If you do this much negative, then you have to do this much positive to kind of balance the scale kind of situation. So that's something to think about. Is that really fair if you think about it from that perspective? All right, so the fact that we just looked at those basic principles there and those 3 steps. Unfortunately, leadership is not something that we just get into this numbers game. You can't just go A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're good. You become a good leader. No, realistically, what we have to do is we actually have to start preparing ourselves and developing a personal philosophy that brings to bear the core values that we hold in ourselves as being the primary drivers of our leadership potential. So truth, honesty, integrity, those kind of core values are what we're looking for, along with other things. You know, hard work, a dedication to a commitment to people, to helping others. All those kind of core values are things that become important in the development of your personal philosophies of leadership. And we also have to think about it from the position of followership as well. Yes, Nikolon.
So, I have a question that I have a question that might need some clarification, right? So, you said that a leader needs to be caring to be a good leader. He needs to consider his people, right? But can that also be a double-edged sword that if a leader is too caring, that it could be detrimental to the team?
How so?
So, I read this quote once that a person who cares for his friends, right? Is a
Uh-huh.
great friend. But like, if that person is to care for more than for a majority of people, a large amount of people, he's not a good leader. The quote basically is that a person who cares for his inner circle is a good friend, but not a good king.
Hmm. I that sounds very Machiavellian. Is that where you got that from? As far as
No,
you're
sir.
aware? Who's the quote from?
As far as I'm aware, huh?
Who's the
It
quote
was
from?
from it was from a book I read.
All right. So the approach you're talking about there is something that was proposed by what's his name again? It was in a book called the Prince. Oh, I can't remember the name of the book, but we tend to call it the Prince Machiavelli, How to Be a Leader. And in the Machiavellian version of it, there are you have many faces of a leader, and in private you are different to the public view, so that you show care differently inside your inner circle as opposed to those on the outside. The problem with the Machiavellian approach to leadership is that it leads to an inherent amount of distrust, because what you do internally is different to what you do externally. Now, if we go back, just two things here. This doing part, you cannot be one way in private and another way in public. That's not what this principle is telling us about. You follow? So what you're talking about there is one of the older versions of or older um, proponents of how leaders ought to behave. You follow me? And those are some of the challenges we actually have to deal with in this program. And from so again, there are different um, models of leadership. The Machiavellian is one. For those of you who want to go look it up, and unfortunately, that approach is one that happens a lot in political environments or in where you deal with kingdoms and queens and kings and stuff like that. But in political environments generally, you have this differentiation of those in the inner circle as opposed to those into the outer circle and that type of stuff. It's very, um, it has a very dark side to it. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't agree with that position though. All right. Sorry, Mr. Haven. All right. Okay, so in the developmental process of developing your leadership potential and developing your leadership skills, there's the paradigm of hard work. And oftentimes our parents and our grandparents would have told us this. You want something in life, you have to work hard. This model is saying, okay, yeah, fine, hard work is good, but it's too simplistic. Instead of working harder, we need to work smarter. Well, what do we mean when we say work smarter? So there are three areas of smarter work: collectively smarter, reflectively smarter, and spiritually smarter. So collectively smarter identifies that all of us are smarter than one of us, and this is where we have to understand that think about think about any problem, and if you have only one person trying to find a solution for it, then you are limited to only what that one person knows and what that one person has experienced previously. If, however, you have a combination of three or four or five people looking at the same problem, you bring to bear on that one problem all of the training, all of the experience of these people, all of them simultaneously. So years of experience are looking at this one issue. So that is why we always say one of us is not smarter than all of us. Okay. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the competitive nature of business around us, there's a lot of times where, or even school, for example, we always pit one person against the rest, and everybody has to, outperform everybody else. So that competitive approach struggles against the collective approach. In fact, even when you are in classes here, and we give you group work to do, most students don't like group work because the challenge of working in groups there's a lot more involved with group work. There's a lot of sociology and there's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of process involvement that goes in together with this. For us to benefit from collectively working together, we have to be able to work properly in groups. And therefore, there's a chapter that presents a lot of the information about groups and teams to help you develop those skills. All right. It's not by choice or it's not by guess that a lot of your courses have group work. The reality is that you will not be in any working environment outside there, from your own business to um, working for other people. You will never be working alone. You have to work with other people. We have to do things with other people. And it means we need to be able to practice that group skill, that working with other folks, respecting other people. Um, and we'll see some of that stuff coming up. Somebody's getting in late. Or Euclid's in and out. Something in the chat. Okay. Okay, cool. She wasn't seeing the old lady. All right, cool. All right, so let's move along. So we understand this collectively smarter thing. Yes? Reflectively smarter, taking the time to make meaning out of what is happening in order to gain perspective and understanding. Now, this is simply taking time to kind of reflect on what has taken place or what is happening to be able to use the knowledge and insight from that reflection to make better decisions in the future. The problem with this is that it requires time to stop and review. And the world that we work in, unfortunately, has a tendency to not be have a lot of allowance for this. So it is really a good thing for us to do. And there's a lot to be gained from reflecting on things in life and then making decisions. Unfortunately, it is a difficult thing to do because you're not just going to be reflectively smarter on by yourself, but you're going to be reflectively smarter within the group as well, and that takes time. So that's the challenge. To be reflectively smarter takes time. When's the last time any of you reflected on your past semester's work to see what went right, what went wrong, and what should you keep and what should you throw? That kind of situation. That's one of the reasons why we accumulate so much junk around us. Huh? Just saying, because we don't kind of review what's on in front of us or what we've been accumulating and what am I using, what I'm not using. How can it be better utilized by getting rid of some of the things from the past. Okay, the third area is spiritually smarter, and this doesn't have anything to do with religion, but it has to do with our values. We need to be critically aware of what are those values that we hold most dear to us, because those are the values that will guide us when we're in the worst times of our lives. So that's why it says here, be aware of the values and beliefs and principles that become your rudder in rough waters and build our character. So look at somebody in there when things are going wrong, and you will see what are their true principles, not the fluff that's around them, but rather the true principles of that individual. So if the first reaction from somebody when they get into difficulties or problems is to be aggressive and to hit out at others, blame other people, lie, bend the truth, deny, those are indicative of somebody whose core values are not in line with what we're looking for in terms of your own leadership development or leadership development generally. Because as a leader who is always looking to blame others for what has taken place and not taking responsibility, that's not the kind of individual we want in leadership positions. It's not the kind of values that we want our leaders to have. We prefer our leaders to have, really good values. And that's an important element that we're going to be looking at in the future. You have to be aware of what your core values are. When things go wrong, what do you do? One of the ways for you to check this is when you had relationship issues, what happened, and what did you do? Who did you blame? Whose fault was it? How much of that was finger pointing to you kind of situation? Things to think about. All right. So we talked about the paradigm of hard work. And what is a paradigm? A paradigm is a way in which we look at things in order to make sense. Forget the question about the current leadership paradigm. We'll come to that and a lot of other things. The problem with paradigms is that when we get stuck in one way of doing things, one approach of doing things, and we're not finding it working, there's a tendency to get stuck in a rut because we keep on trying the same thing over and over again to get a different outcome. That's sort of like how we've been tackling crime in this country. We've been using the same strategies, techniques, and ideas over and over again, and we're not actually fixing the problem. The problem is getting worse. That to me signals the need for what is called paradigm shifting. It means we have to rethink our approach to the problem and find some other way to get things done. All right, that's just one example that I could think of relative to what's going on in this country. There are other paradigm shifts. There's a paradigm shift here. Leadership is not something a leader possesses as much as it's a process that involves followership. So let's think about this. This is a paradigm shift away from leaders because most leadership programs focus their attention on what the leader does. And the leader must do this and they must do that and they must have this. And I've spoken a bit about a lot of the things that leaders must do, that must engender certain things. But the process of engaging in leadership is null and void if you have no followers. So the leadership in the case that we're looking at here involves more of the follower than just the leader alone. It's a combination of the two. In fact, the followership is really leadership in action among people and groups. Because you, as a leader, anybody, any leader, will not get anything done if there's nobody following you. So there's a logic to that. All right? If there's nobody following you, then you're not a leader. You're not leading anything. All right? So we have to pay attention to followership because in this program of leadership, we're going to be paying attention to a lot of that. So one of the things that we can start doing is classifying or analyzing the types of followers that we have. So in this little model here, from Potter and Williams here, we could look at this four matrix here. You're looking at, on the x-axis, you're looking at performance. That's your ability to do things. And on the y-axis, we're looking at relationship. That has to do with communication, networking, that type of stuff. So you have four different people. So as a leader, you have people in your organization. You could classify them. People who are high on both axes, they are partners. Somebody who is high on the performance but low on relational is the contributor. Those who are low on both ends, they're subordinate people. And those who are high on the relational but low on the performance are the politicians. Now, a lot of you can kind of consider yourself in a group project. You might be a contributor. You might be really good with doing the work, writing up the papers, but you don't like and you don't feel comfortable with the communication part and the presenting part. That'll make you a contributor. The opposite is also true. You might have somebody who is a politician. They're really good with the communication and pulling the PowerPoint together and glibbing things over and whatnot. They're high on that area, but they have very low performance. They can't actually do the work, write the paper, pull the research together, that kind of stuff. They're poor in that element. What do you do as a leader? You come across a group of people that, well, me, a strategy I could use is I will combine the politician with the contributor. Because as a small sub team within my group, they will complement each other. All right. Now let's look at the partner. The partner who's somebody who is highly independent. They are high in relationship and high in performance. So they are capable of doing the job. So capable that they can challenge me for leadership. But I don't want them to necessarily have to challenge me. I want to be able to use that amount of power and strength that that individual. I'm going to partner them with the subordinate. You know why? The subordinate is the person who has the lowest um, ability in the group. All right. So that partner is going to partner with. That sounds interesting. The individual that I classify as a partner will work with the subordinate to pull them along, to encourage and give them the options and provide the tools to bring them along. Why? Because I know the partner can handle that story. Now, you're probably going to say, well, I'm being unfair because I'm saddling the partner with the weakest person in the organization or the group. But remember this: there's the adage, a group is as strong as its weakest member, and that is something you have to remember. The weakest person in your group is where your group's performance is likely to fall, because that person is likely, or individuals is likely, to drag you down to their level. So if you are able to improve the performance of those individuals, not only would you give them opportunities to learn to grow, all right, because we don't always stay in subordinate levels. People aren't just naturally lazy. They just simply, in a lot of instances, don't know how to do certain things, and they need help. And that's why I would engage a partner with the subordinate. That's just one method that you could use to evaluate your follower types. That gives you, once you evaluate it in that manner, it gives you strategies that you can utilize to manage them and to get the most out of them. This is another set. This is the Hyacinth model. This is usually associated with political analysis. So you evaluate your followers into these 7 different types: loyalists, sycophants, critics, opportunists, spectators, traitors, and realists. Again, knowing where they fall and what subsets they may be in allows you to manage what's going on. So sycophants, you might put them together with loyalists to be able to manage what's happening there, or put them together with realists so that they can, manage what's taking place here. The critics probably need to be uh, put together with another person, that kind of stuff. So you know what you need to be doing about these individuals. So the critics and the realists can work together in terms of managing what's going on. A leader dependent on on both the critic and the realist to tell them, okay, whatever is happening in the organization, what you're doing, it's critical evaluation of what's going on. Loyalists tend to and sycophants tend to be, lack a lot of the critical analysis skills, because they are likely to want to please you all the time, because one is only looking to see what they can get out of you. The other one just wants to prove themselves to be loyal. Opportunists and sycophants kind of fall into similar categories, but there's a difference. One is a little more dangerous than the other. The other opportunists are only there for what they can get, the opportunities they can draw from it. So again, you need to be able to watch and be able to manage these things. Traitors, of course, you need to be watching out for all the time. So again, knowing where they fall gives you an option to be able to manage that. This is the Kelly's 5 models here. This one is a little more, I'm thinking we have a full 4-quadrant graphical representation. On the y-axis, we're measuring critical thinking, independent and critical thinking. And we go from totally independent and critical to dependent and uncritical. And then on the x-axis, we're measuring passive to active behavior. So where would we like? So again, we're looking at where people are likely to fall. Effective followers are those that are highly active and highly critical. Those are the ones that leaders really should be encouraging the majority of people to follow there, because critical thinking people serve you better when they're active in the organization. As opposed to them, you have the conformists. They're very uncritical or very dependent. They're not going to do anything unless you tell them to do, and they're not going to vary from what you tell them to do. Conformists are dangerous because they tend to be sheep. They're highly active, so they're not these kind of persons you can utilize to, you know, kind of get your message across without any sort of independent thinking. Kind of like not sheep so much as well, what do you call it? These like your enforcers in the party. Passive followers, they don't do anything, they don't think anything. Dangerous people because they need to be managed carefully because they can be problematic. Another group, alienated followers, highly critical individuals, very passive behavior. They are disengaging from your organization. Um, if you find too much of your individuals falling in this area, you need to be checking on what you're doing. The pragmatic survivors, the kind of person that in the center, um, they tend to be the ones that you need to be able to push them towards the effective follower. Again, this is just a model in which you can evaluate different types of follower styles, different types of followers, and therefore engage in strategies to manage with them. What are the follower responsibilities in this model? Offers support to the leader, take initiative, and don't wait for the leader to have to tell you to do things. Counseling and coaching roles required, both for the leader as well as other followers. Because again, we're going to agree first off that leaders don't know everything, and therefore they are going to need assistance and help. Coaching when necessary, counseling when necessary. Raise issues and concerns when necessary. Critical thinking again. You're not just going to take things as the leader tells you. You're going to raise issues and concerns when necessary. If you find something's questionable, you're going to ask questions about it and say, well, why are we doing this? You're not a yes man, so to speak. Seek and encourage honest feedback. Again, same thing. You're not a yes man. You want honest feedback. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the wrong thing. Both directions. And the leader can talk to followers about their behavior through honest feedback, and similarly, followers give honest feedback to the leader. Clarify your role and expectations. So followers they really do need to know what am I supposed to be doing and what do you need from me. Those are what have to be very clear in a follower's mind. Um, Show appreciation, and that is to others in the organization as well as the leader, and vice versa. Keep the leader informed. For any leader to make proper decisions, they need to be fully updated at all points in time. All right, nothing is worse than trying to make a decision without the latest information. Resist inappropriate influences of the lead. This is important because this is where a lot of leaders don't like anybody who resists their ideas and their thoughts and their concepts. This is an important one. A lot of maximum leaders do not appreciate this. In fact, they get rid of people from their organizations who resist them because they see them as being unable to control. But that in this model, controlling people is not what the objective of the leader is. All right. Competencies for those responsibilities. Displaying loyalty, functions well in change environments. That's important because the environment is always going to be evolving. Functions well on teams and groups. Important. We spoke about that already. Thinks independently and critical. We've spoken about that all the time. And considers integrity of paramount importance. So again, we come back to this whole issue of what is the most important things. High levels of integrity in the organization for both follower and leader. All right. So, given all the things we just described there, is follower the best term to use for it? Well, already from those little things there, we can see some other terms that we can use. I would suggest things like associates, partners. Can you think of anything else to describe somebody who is in an organization classified as a follower? Can you think of anything else? Any other terms you could use? Somebody suggest something. Miss Daly. How about a team member? All right, let me move along. All right, we almost near the end here, guys. All right. So remember we talked about various situations call for different styles of leadership. This is what we're talking about. We have the classical styles of the laissez-faire, which is kind of laid back, leave things alone, how it hang, it swing, autocratic, my way or the highway, participative leadership styles, which is where we engage with other people, find out how they're thinking, and come to some cohesive or collective decision making process in terms of the style of leadership. Most people prefer that. Most people have worked with the autocratic. The worst I've worked with is the laissez-faire. It's a kind of hit or miss situation. Then we have situational leadership styles. Situational is interesting. It's a leader who emerges given a situation where that person in that time has all the necessary skills to deal with the issue. Where I see situational leadership happening a lot is on accident sites because somebody there generally has enough knowledge to know how to deal with the accident, the emergency, especially where there has been some sort of injury or damage. Um, that's where you see the individual rise to the occasion, deal with the issue, and once the issue has been dealt with, they just slip back into the general membership. All right, that's situational. Emergent is more along the lines of a person who is working within an organization, kind of works and works all the way through, and emerges as a leader over time. So it's sort of like working your way from the bottom to the top. Transactional, most parents use this. They've used this on us a lot in the past. Transactional, you promise something to get some behavior. So, okay, you'll get a bonus if you do this. You'll get a reward if you do this. Or I will take away this bonus if you don't do this. Transactional. Transformational is a little different, pretty different actually. This is where a leader that has to motivate individuals into achieving the goals of the organization. And they need to do it in such a way that the motivation is intrinsic in the person. So I have to do a lot of work as this type of leader to be able to sell the picture of the goals that we want to do. Generally, transformational leadership is required when organizations are going through major change, and you actually have change management. It comes in. In fact, we're doing a chapter on that area by itself. Okay, and then of course we have the visionary type of leadership. This is like the Elon Musk's kind of situation. They paint a picture of a future that they convince everybody to get involved with. So the Mars missions and that type of stuff. Everybody's buying into that, and to get to that Mars situation, you have to go through the whole growing pains of the SpaceX program. And I mean, they had failures, but of course the vision is still there. The goal of the living on Mars situation or populating Mars is the ultimate goal, but along the way there are numerous little things that have to be done. Visionary leaders have to spend time um, pointing to or painting that picture of where they are going, but they have a lot of difficulties dealing with the day-to-day management of the organization. So they're more macro kind of view, not the micromanaging type of situation. So these are the styles of leadership that we're likely to find and see being used around us on a regular basis. Um, so who's the leader? The leader is any person who's actively engaged with others to accomplish change. Simple definition. The purpose of the leader: motivate employees, or motivate members, attain the organizational goals, ensure that rules are adhered to both by himself as well as others, provide continuity and momentum to make sure that the organization continues its journey, embrace and foster change, because if you can't embrace the change or foster the change within yourself, why are you asking other people to do it? Working towards the common good, as to everybody's good, not just to my good or only the organization. Socially responsible, making sure that what we do doesn't damage or hurt organizations or stakeholders outside of the organization, including the world around us. We have to be civically engaged in the society. We have to actually, um, by example, show that we are willing to be engaged with our society around us, and that we show some level of civic responsibility. Now, I'm gonna take those areas a little bit further. So this is the one: social responsibility from a personal point of view is our personal commitment to the well-being of people, the world around us, and the general public good. We have to be socially responsible as an individual. All right, that there's simple little things, that need to be done in relation to that. Civic engagement. We need to develop a heightened sense of responsibility for all of the communities we are involved with: work, home, the social environment that I'm engaging, family, communities, everything. I need to feel that I am responsible. Behave responsibility in all of those communities. So we don't litter. We don't play loud music. We're not being a nuisance to our society outside there. So four constructs of civic engagement. So civil action, commitment or duty, civil skills, and social cohesion. So all of these things are part of civic engagement. We are working towards making our community a place that everybody will be happy living in and existing in and working in. It means that we put pressure on government in order to pass laws that make life easy for us, that we behave in a manner where people trust us, and we give back to our society. We don't just hoard everything for ourselves. Things like we used to have a neighbor who used to take his dog shit and throw it in the people's yard next door. Uh, Pissed the living daylights out of them. You don't do those things. You think about other people around you. You don't only think about what you want. You're engaging with the people around you. That's the civics of it. The sense of personal responsibility individuals should feel to uphold their obligation of part of any community, and that speaks to things like um, serving in jury duty when called upon to do so. I can't tell you how many people duck that all the time. These are just some examples. As students going to school, hard one here, obeying the law. Think about how many of you who are drivers break this all the time. Break the law. How do you do it? Speeding, parking badly, overtaking when you're not supposed to. All right. Hopefully, all are paying taxes. Those of you who work or your parents work, you're doing those kind of things. All right. How many of you here might be involved in some sort of community service? Do you participate in like church groups, 4-H clubs, the Leos, anything to give back to society? Anybody? Did you vote last elections? For those of you who can vote? No?
No, sir.
Wow.
So I didn't even realize I could vote yet. I said earlier.
Uh-huh. How old are you?
Oh, 19.
Well, no. Yep. Well, if you've only turned 19 recently or 18 recently, I don't think you had a chance to vote yet.
Nope.
You're approaching your first voting opportunity. Interesting. Service in the military. Anybody here participated in the Girl Guides, the Scouts, or
Oh,
the
I did.
Cadets?
Girl Guides
Yeah,
and Brownies.
I was
right,
trained for
brownies,
each.
right, 4-H club. All of those kind of things fall into the area here. The Girl Guides, cadets, and stuff kind of fall into paramilitary type of activities. We don't have the voluntary military thing here in Trinidad, but in a lot of countries they do have that. You have to give the equivalent of 2 years service to the military in within your area. I think they call it the developmental reserves and that type of stuff. Um, a number of countries have that. They've been playing with the idea of voluntary or mandatory military service for our young men and women here. Um, they've been uh, they've been messing around with that, but I'm not certain that that our society will be open to that. Displaying patriotism. Most of us here, we're really happy when Trinidadians do well around the world, and we fly our flags and whatnot, but we're not very good with um, patriotism consistently. We tend to be more patriotic only when things are going good. So we kind of bandwagonist behavior. Anybody here? Like I know. I think we have. Chris's kind of not here right now, but Clarissa, I should say. Um, that it's annoying for sports folks. I think when those kind of things happening. When you have just bandwagonists that hop on and then hop off, and everybody loves a Trini and then everybody hates a Trini, then back and forth on that. So we spoke about this question before: should a leader know everything? And the answer to that is no. If that's the reality, then leadership has to be required to be open to learning. Again, all of us is smarter than the one of us, right? So it means that the entire organization that you set up, including the leader, needs to ensure that the environment that we are creating in the organization is open to learning, making mistakes, and sharing knowledge. The model that um, Haven was talking about earlier, it definitely would not engage in sharing knowledge, because knowledge is power, and holding on to that knowledge ensures that you maintain power over others. Two, they do not tolerate mistakes. Anybody makes a mistake, they're immediately fired, and actually in the um, um, in the leadership program that we're talking about there, they usually put these people to death. That was back in that time frame. Learning is something that it is not supposed to take place openly. It is an environment in which you learn things quietly on your own. So you hide your learning. We don't want that. We want an environment. Like, think about the college here. Everybody is learning at all the time. Even your lecturers are attending classes and making changes and trying new things. We make mistakes, yes, and we learn from our mistakes, and we share that knowledge among our peers. And hopefully you all are utilizing that same approach to things. So this is a learning model that you could look at. Primarily, what we're looking at is the intersection of your focus, your will, and your capabilities to be able to do something. The a model that might be more applicable to you guys looks more like this, where you conceptualize an idea, you apply it, you observe the experience, you reflect upon it, and you either reconceptualize and set it back into this rotation here, or it moves forward into critical assessment, and then once it passes through critical assessment and inquiry, it then passes into the changing existing theory, which is then applied in the real world. This is along the lines of the process of hypothesis testing, um, where you kind of have to get into that element of testing and retesting, and then making sure that the experiments are repeatable, the outcomes are repeatable before you actually bring it out into the real world and apply it there. Okay, so those are learning models. So some of the most effective organizations are actually learning environments. Again, I'll point to lifelong learning organizations like COSTAT. Google is another one where the environment is always one where they're encouraging constant learning, and they value people who bring new knowledge into it. So that's something that is important, because just like what some of the radiologists were talking about, if you are in a job and you are not constantly learning more about the discipline that you're operating in, the technology that's evolving on a regular basis around you, you're going to get stale, and you're going to have problems across the board. So one other form of learning that is really critical is experiential learning, learning from doing. Basically, we either do something or we think about it and we learn from that process. So if we look at the representation of that information here, you can either start from the concrete experience, reflect on it, reconceptualize it, experiment, and from that experiment, the concrete experience then leads back into more reflection. So it's a never-ending process. Or you can start from abstraction, or the abstract conceptualization of an idea, actively experiment, have the experience, reflect on their experience, and then make further changes to the concept. So this is experiential learning. Learning through experience is probably one of the most powerful ways to learn something, because you're melding both the mind and the kinesthetic activities required for the completion of the. Think about it from the point of view of learning to play an instrument, for example, or learning to do some sort of artwork. It requires both thought and action to be able to achieve it. You can't just think about doing something. You have to actually put it into action to really see if you're getting the gist of it and developing the necessary skills. So that brings us to the end of this introduction here. And I want to leave you with this quotation here. Leadership is a role open to anybody. Leadership is living by a personal set of rules in which you motivate others to do the right thing, be engaged in the world, and to listen to others and their concerns. Leadership is focused on the other person, and that is from the same text that we've been dealing with throughout this instance here, by Chandra Johnson, one of the students from the college that they were doing a lot of research on. So the main thing here is leadership is something that's focused on everybody else. It is not about the leader. It is about the leader and everybody. Okay. Um, so you'd notice that in this leadership model that we're going to be looking at, we're going to be focused on not the leaders alone, but the leader and his relationship with others. Because without the others, we can't do anything. So I want to leave you with this here. Leadership is not the privilege of the few. You and I can and should be leaders. So later on, we'll get into more discussions of the information that we're going to be looking at next week. For example, we're going to go through the evolution of leadership thought through the decades, well, through years actually, probably going back to the 1800s, to look at the emergence of leadership and leadership studies across the board, and the models that have been developed throughout that time frame, coming right up to about 2010. 2010, 20, pretty, not too far back. Hasn't been too much more thing from there. All right, so I know we are a bit beyond 8:30, so I know we're running a bit late. So, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask at this point? Anybody? I know you're tired. Yes, Sakura?
I just wanted to know for our presentation when we teach in the class, do we have to have our cameras on or we just like sharing our screen for whatever PowerPoint we have?
Well, the option of turning your camera on is yours. You can choose to use your camera or not. It's totally up to the individuals. I wouldn't insist upon it because I don't know your personal circumstance. All right. I have a green screen and all kind of thing, and I have microphones and but I don't know what your circumstances are, and I won't insist upon it. But that'd be nice if we could see you. But it's not. You're not going to be marked down for it. Let's put it that way. All right. That
Okay.
answers your question. All right. Okay. Anybody
Yes,
else?
sir.
Anybody else questions? All right. I know it's been a long evening, and it's only Tuesday. So thank you all for coming and for participating. The recording of this will go up as soon as I finish processing it, and I'll load it onto the class. So let me shut down the recording, and while I'm doing that, I'd like to wish everybody good night.